His name is wonderful. His name is wonderful. Jesus, my Lord. He is the mighty King, Master of everything. His name is wonderful.
I should like to share a personally precious message with you. It's about a poignant session between two friends, a time of reminiscing back through a lifetime of association. It took place on a sunny summer Saturday afternoon several years ago. It was at the home of a mutually dear friend, Ramona Dix. The cast of characters, the late Audrey Mieir, listed in the Who's Who of American Women, and author of the beloved song, His Name is Wonderful, and myself, Wendell St. Clair. I was just 15 years old and she was just 20 when we met and began our unique songwriting collaboration. But more of that on the video. First, let me explain, this wasn't a scripted session, but rather an extemporaneous exchange while the home video whirred on. In fact, from time to time you can hear our friend Ramona and Charles Mieir talking in the background as Ramona prepared dinner. By the way, please take a word of advice. Keep focusing on Audrey, for I, 20 pounds heavier and wearing a hideous pink sports shirt, would like to sink into the background as much as possible. Well, here we are, just as we were those several years ago.
You know, though, I was just thinking, I knew a lot about Audrey before I ever met you. The first that I ever remember is my mom and I sitting around our little majestic radio and hearing songs in the night with Marie and Audrey Wagner, and we used to listen to you sing. Yeah. And then I told you this before, that I heard that this Audrey Wagner was going to get married, and it happened on a Saturday. Was it a Saturday night?
Well, I know that it was January 1st.
Okay,
so it was
that's right, because it was a holiday. It was a holiday.
Because the tournament of roses had been that day and all that.
At that time, I was working on the janitor staff at Edgewood Temple for 15 cents an hour.
And I was working for 10 cents an hour on my tuition in Bible school.
And I remember, Audrey, that I didn't go to your wedding. But the next morning, I was on a crew that went and cleaned that mess.
1,500 people, and they weren't invited guests, Wendell. There were 300 guests invited, and that took all the little money we had to send those invitations. But if you will remember, Amy Semple McPherson, who was the love of our life at that time, was giving one of her, oratorios in the main auditorium. And so she said to everybody, now kiddies, it was convention time.
Right.
To all the preachers, kiddies, we're going to move over to the school building. We're going to have a wedding. Everybody come on. So here we come driving down the street. At 10:30 that wedding was to be, and the church was bursting. People were hanging out the windows.
Well, people knew you too because
but our
of your
invited guests were outside. They came at 10:30 and there were no seats. And our whole wedding costs $50. Isn't that exciting? I mean, that was, in the days when vegetables were...
I remember marrying my daughter off, and it cost me a lot more than that.
I know. We've married several.
Along about that time, I was just bursting with these little song poems. I was just writing them, and I didn't know what to do. And I met a young guy about my age. His name was Miller Freeman. Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
A strange little boy.
Yeah,
and he played in F sharp. And he played the most gorgeous chords.
That's strange enough for me.
But he played just some little real tight chords.
Yeah.
And he was writing melodies. And I said, well, let's write songs together. And we wrote a couple of songs. And you and Charles had just come to be directors of the Answers Temple Young People.
Right.
High school young people. I was a high schooler in those times. And somebody said, Audrey, you ought to meet this guy. These guys are writing songs. So I remember that you came up to, remember the Blue Room up on the
Yes,
top of the
I
school building?
remember that.
And Miller was playing, and I was singing our little song. I don't even remember what they were or anything like that. But you know, I remember at the time, this is probably the greatest misstatement you've ever made in all of your life.
Well, I've made
You
many
said,
sense.
I can write melodies, but I can't write words. Who would believe that? You really did. And you said, why don't
I
you...
hadn't written words.
And said, why don't you write the words and I'll write the music?
Oh, Wendell, I remember that.
And
I'm 70 going on nothing.
Well,
I'm 71 going on nothing, and some of these little things are great to hear again.
I'm 66 going on something I don't care to mention.
I know it. I can't believe it.
But anyway, I'm just kind of going to chronology, and then I want you to talk about, I want to kind of lay out the setting of our beginning. And then you said, well, we live up
on Echo Park.
Off Echo Park Avenue.
Up some stairs.
Up some stairs in a little cottage. And why don't you come up there some afternoon and we'll get together? So after high school, I trudged down from Belmont High School down through Echo Park and onto Sunset Boulevard and
up those stairs.
And up those stairs. And I think the Pie Man was selling chocolate pie.
Wendell, I supported a donut fight.
No, you
And the
didn't.
donuts got fuzz on them. We didn't even eat them, but he would climb all those stairs.
You ate it up.
His kids were all sick, so I had to. When we got ready to move, we had things that no one ever heard of that I bought at the door in order to support people's
Well, I know
sad
that. I
stories.
remember that. But anyway, you and I wrote a few songs together, and they were having a Crusader rally at Angel's Temple. Or no, it was wasn't it the, they were having a broadcast, their radio station, KFSG, was having its birthday party or something, and we were invited as the young people to present a number. And you and I sat at the piano, the big grand piano on the platform of Angel's Temple, and you remember when I got up, I hit my head on the boom. You know, the PA roared and rumbled. I was so humiliated, I thought, I'll never sing again. But after that service, Phil Kerr, who was the manager of the radio station, walked up to us.
And wait a minute, he was one of my, I've got to stick it in here in case someone's watching, he was one of my idols because I had always been playing little jazzy tunes. And the hymns didn't go that way.
Right.
And I found Phil's book. And it had Ain't Got Nothing at all these little things. So when I met him, I was in awe of him. Now, take it from there.
Well, anyway, he walked up to us. Do you remember the first thing he said?
No.
Where have you been all my life?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a stock statement, but we were thrilled to death
He
because...
didn't know that one day I'd be directing his heart.
All right. But anyway, he said, would you guys like a broadcast? And we couldn't
And
believe
wait, honey,
it.
in case someone ever sees this, radio was big.
Oh, yeah.
Like this is like we're on television now with the little red light over there. When you were asked to be on radio, you had made it.
That was a big day, you know. And so he
Nobody
said,
got paid, I might mention. If you were asked to come, you were lucky to be
it was
asked.
its own reward.
Yes.
But then he said, why don't you come up to my office on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon, we'll talk about it. So I said, well, I'm going to school, I'll have to get out of school. So we made an appointment afterwards, and I remember I was all...
Isn't that when you borrowed Charles' coat?
No, that's another time. You can bring that up. We were very poor, both of us.
But we could share our
Of course, we still are, but we don't look it like we used
50
to.
years later.
But anyway, we went up there, and he said, I have a spot on Saturday night at, was it 9:30?
Remember, I'm 71.
Well,
You're
come
just
on.
a kid. Okay.
It was at 9:30, and
Yeah.
he said, I'm going to give you 15 minutes, and he said, I'm going to call you the Song Makers.
He named it. I was
And
wondering
so
the
he
other
named
day
us.
where that came from.
And he said, I'll call you the Song Makers. And so we said, great with us. So we prepared, and of course we appeared. And we were on the air maybe for a year and a half
And
or
we
two.
loved it, and people loved it. We just talked back and forth, gave some scriptures, and did our own original songs.
We only sang our original song. We wrote 5 new songs every week to sing on that little 15-minute broadcast.
Without any problem. They just came.
And so I would go every afternoon after school. I'd go rushing up, must have been at least a mile And I'd walk up to Audrey's house, and if she had a piano student, I'd have to sit in the corner and be real quiet while she made 50 cents an hour.
I was going to say, in case you're watching out there, 50 cents included harmony, evangelistic piano, and advice for the love Lord.
And then, well, we did that for a number of years.
We really had good results, though, Wendell. People loved that. I've just come through a tribute concert, the kind that usually is after you're dead. I'm not being funny now. The type of thing, people say nice things about all these artists, whoever's gone, and they bring flowers and so on. And it was a wonderful thing that it wasn't just the music that I was hearing. It was the people who'd taken time with Wendell to love and encourage other musicians and encourage them to write, encourage them. Lanny Wolfe, he's one of today's great songwriters.
Right.
He got up there and said, Audrey Mieir is a part of every song I write. Because he was a 16-year-old boy thumping on a piano up there at Marvin's church in Los Gatos, and nobody knew he was going to be a great songwriter, but I gave him a record, wrote on there, "A man's gift maketh room for him, and bringeth him before great people." He's got it framed, like in a glass frame. And he said, I took that as my theme. That's what I'm trying to say. Those were beginning days for us, but we also were helping.
I was a 16-year-old boy then, too,
Right,
Audrey.
that's right, and we were helping to plant the seeds for the next generation to come. And when we discovered Andre Crouch, he was just as good as he is now, but no white church would open their door to him. On these videos that came for our concert, Sandra, his sister, said the same thing. I was shocked. I knew she loved us, but she said, you were the great white mama for all of us black guys. Danny Bell and Walter Artis and Lily Knowles. I didn't set out to just be that for the black people. I loved all the races, and they had gorgeous sound.
Remember on Sunday nights?
And all we could do was duplicate that Negro sound. They had it.
We used to go to Echoes of Eden, remember? The
Dr.
Black
Clair
Church?
Britton took me there, that wonderful little hunchback genius of the word. You never got to know him, did you, Ramona? Well, he was the teacher in school that you dream about, who knows the Bible almost by heart. And that's where my first arrangements were written at Bethany. But he took me, too, besides Wendell, down to Echoes of Eden, which was a great big black choir. Can I tell you something funny? When I went into that choir, after 4 or 5 times of going in, my sister-in-law Adeline got me into a suit and a hat. You know me well enough. I'm a moo-moo type of girl. And when I walked in, the ushers knew me from Angela's Temple. Oh, Mrs. Mieir, we're glad to have you. We'll bring you right down the front. I had saved my money for that plum-colored suit for at least 6 months. And it just gotten out of leave. No, that's a shoe store. Another one, anyway. And I walked probably, and I walked down the aisle probably, and I looked up at the pianist, and she had the exact outfit on, and she and after it was over, she came down and she said, I know you. We both have good taste. I just thought I'd throw that in. I never forgot that. It was so cute. We became good friends, but that knocks your pride when you spend all that money. You think you're coming in like Queen of Sheba or something.
I thought of a similar one, but I don't think I'd better bring that up.
Be careful.
Okay, but then after you left, then I started singing with Bill Kerr and traveling around, and I finished Bible college, and I set out across the country with a guy named Lynn Charter, who's now one of the superintendents of Foursquare denomination, and a guy named Bonnie Jones, and we went to Norwalk, Ohio. We went to Norwalk, Ohio, and we had a little 40 by 60 tent. And we had a summer meeting there, and then Lynn and I moved on to Cambridge, Ohio. And we were pastoring a church there in Cambridge, Ohio. Oh, we've got lots of time. We're pastoring a church in Cambridge, Ohio, and Audrey wrote me a letter or something. We kept in touch, and she said, we're with this evangelist Ethel R. Willits, and there's this fantastic ministry up here in Detroit. Why don't you come up and visit us? And I went up there one Christmas.
I forgot that till today.
And I went...
I never forgot you, though, see.
No, of course you never did. We had 50 years of constant contact.
Yeah, close friendship.
And so I remember I went up there, and here this huge was a tar paper building, and it was very inglorious with
But
sawdust floor and everything,
thousands
but
of
thousands of people coming out. And Audrey was up there at the piano just singing
Playing
away,
away.
directing her choir, and
And their theme song was, "We were happy people, yes we are."
right.
Oh, dear
So
Lord.
I remember you and I sang some, and we sang on the broadcast, and Ethel came to me afterwards and said, "You don't have to go back to that little church. We've got room for you here."
That's how
So
that
that started.
That's how, we were talking about it, Charles and I, the other day, and we couldn't quite remember how that came about.
How I got up
We
there
got
with you.
The
Yeah.
Sorensens, we got them in, Paul and Henry, and Mother, and Pauline. The whole group came in about that same time.
So why don't you talk a little bit about her, Ethel Willis?
Well,
I don't know.
we don't want to, we've been talking about some of the funny things, but Wendell, the thing that, if we were never to talk again, the thing that I would want both of us to remember is that we were chosen by God. You were a young boy, you had no sense of direction, and then I don't remember whether the family was happy, family life or not, but
Not really.
I don't think that it was, as I remember it, and we claimed you as a member of the family. See, people forget, women and men can have friendships together.
Of course.
Well, I know, but the world is we're in a very shaky situation as we're talking here, making this tape. And the friendship extended to Charles, and we felt that Wendell was a part of the family. But we have to be that, not only when we're singing and ministering, we have to be that when the hard times come. And you had some tragedies come to your life, and we loved you, and through any of the problems that any of us have, we've always shared them. And isn't that what friendship is supposed to be? But you do not, there's no time left to make old friends. That's my statement.
Right.
You know, you better cherish the ones that you have now. And Charles
Oh,
and
I do.
I know. And Charles and I have had a full, rich 50 years. The one wonderful thing, Wendell, we were talking about Korea, we won't go into it here, but we never know where God is leading us with the gifts that He gives us. The scriptures, I had visions early, you did too, and I quoted a scripture today that said the vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it flowers. If it be long, then wait. It cannot be late. And I've had lots of physical problems. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our shining hours. But always I knew there was something ahead. It was something more than my choir of 370 singing at the Hollywood Bowl with 20,000
sang our
there.
song too, remember?
Right, with 20,000 there and 20,000 turned away by the Bowls count, one of the first full gospel rallies. Those were shining hours. The Shrine Auditorium, the Coliseum, Angelus Temple, Billy Graham, his first films, Jack Schuler, his first, I was in early TV with those people when they had one camera. Oral Roberts, Rex Humbert, all these people we worked with. And yet through all of that, I knew there was something more, and I didn't know what. Now, at the time I'm mentioning, after years, first I thought it was Meier Choir Clinic. Now this was done by a wonderful man that published my music. You went on to be a great leader of Youth for Christ in San Jose. You had all of your things going. We still met, hugged, and carried on. But Nana said, we came back from being with Rex Humbert. We were there for a year. I started 300 voice choirs for him. We came back. This is God's leading again. Tim Spencer, the head of Nana, said, Audrey, what do you feel left that you need to do? Now remember, I'd led all these big choirs. I'd had big choirs everywhere, and we had recorded the whole thing. I said, Tim, everywhere we've gone, there's little choir leaders and little choir members that have said, will you give us a piece of your mimeographed arrangement? I say, how can I give it to them? It's 5-part women, 4-part men, plus a high trio and a low bass. And I said, there's no way.
And
I said, is there any way, Tim, that we could start excuse my voice, whoever might be listening, I'm having a little bronchial problem. I really have a sweet, low voice. I said, is there any way that we can reach to these little people and simplify the arrangements and then put it on a record or a tape and let them learn to sing along with us and play the piano along with me and let me talk between the songs and encourage them and not charge very much. And then scatter them all over. And Tim said, let's do it. Mieir Choir 20. It was a shining hour. We went broke because we gave too much away. Finally, we had hundreds of choirs all over the country. Charles and I take our little camper and truck, and we load it with music to give to them. Stuart Hamlin's and whoever gave us. Andre.
Some of our music too, though.
Right, everything.
Cranberry Lost,
all those things we gave away.
Just a Dreamer.
These were things we gave away. We hit all the churches, Wendell. We even hit a town named Whiskey Town. And we even met a preacher named Reverend Booze there. This is true. And I tried to be polite.
Come on now.
God's truth. And I tried to be polite. He's a choir director. I was going to give him a piece of music. I said, Reverend Booze, eh? He said, no, sister, plain old booze. Then another town.
Whiskey Town this is.
Whiskey Town is buried with water now. It's up there in the northern California. Yeah. And then the next place I met a preacher who was the church treasurer. His name was Chisler. You know, you got this, maybe something like this. But anyway, to finish this off, we spent 2 years. Those records went overseas, and they were translated, written on the paper in their language, until we had the music. His name is wonderful. I'd written already. Was all over the world. I've got to thank Manna for that. It had been done in every major language. I didn't write that to be a hit. That was written as any of my words were when I didn't have a writing partner. They had to come directly from God because I'm not writing today. I don't write Moon and June. But what he wanted said. You know what he wanted said in that song? He wanted Jesus to be acknowledged as Almighty God. He had already had How Great Thou Art. See? This is Almighty God, is He. Okay, as a result of that, we had to close it. They went broke. Charles and I, again, were left. What is the next thing? Charles came up with it. He said, honey, instead of going to all these little churches, I'm telling you this to show you the progression to the shining hour. Charles said, let's have sings. And let's go into one church. Instead of trying to go to Whiskey Town, all these, go into a good-sized city and get somebody there to help, bring in all the choirs and tell them we'll give them a free piece of music and a free record. Not thousands of them, but a free one. When we started, and that was in Los Gatos, that church up there had 79 members to start with, and they opened the door. Well, my Pentecostal friends thought we'd lost our marbles. But God said, this is the place to start it. And today that church is 5,000 on Sundays, and their admissions last year was 1,500,000.
Largest church in Northern California.
But he gives the credit, honey, to those saints, not just putting credit on me. It's because it broke down every legal wall, and that's what made the church get out of Christian church, we for and no more. Okay, now suddenly in the middle of that, God dumped something on me. I hate to put it that way. That was to be the shining hour for me. But all this had to happen first. Dr. Sidney Carell came and sat in our front room. He was our mentor and our timing role
remember
model,
from day one.
Okay, he had missions all over the world. Mission stations, United World Mission. He said, Audrey and Charles, I'm on my way home. And he said, I've got to tell you an unbelievable situation that exists in Korea. I have orphanages there, but I didn't know it at this time. There's 55,000 Korean American children of GIs that are hated and totally rejected by Korea. And nobody is doing anything. And I promised the missionary, they can't go to school without a sponsor. There's no free education plus the beginning days. And he said, it's $15 a month. He said, Audrey and Charles, before I get in the plane and go on home, could you take a couple anyway? I said, well, sure, we didn't have any money, but sure we'll take two. He said, well, then you'll get 2 letters in the mail. 2 weeks later, the first letter came. I couldn't believe it. My mother is dying of tuberculosis. It's been translated. I, good boy, 15 years old. I need help. Cannot go to school without help. Have 2 little sisters, one tubercular in a hospital. Please, God, let somebody get this letter. I said, we got to take him. And we named him Mark Mieir. Next week, a little girl with little shiny pigtails. Please, somebody help me. My mother committed suicide. I live with old grandma. We eat on $8 a month. But I a student in school, the way they're translated, you know. Please, God, have somebody help me to stay in school. Charles said a prophetic thing. He who didn't care too much about kids, he said, we got to adopt this one. This is the truth. We laugh about it because she's the apple of his eye, you know. We named her Leanne. And Wendell, pretty soon I went to Korea. There's where my shining hour came. When I stepped off the plane, and these little kids came running up to me, slanted gray-green eyes, reddish hair, some of them, black skins, big Sophia Loren eyes, came up to me, and in funny English, they pulled on my dress and said, "Go to America, find father." I said, God, I'm a musician. I'm not capable of this. I should be up leading my choirs and playing. And God said, I gave you the music and gave you a ministry in all these churches across the country where the preachers welcome you anytime to come and preach and minister. Now they'll allow you to tell the story of my forgotten Amerasian children. I give it to you. It's your responsibility. And Wendell has started a brand new, I was 50 in my late 50s then. And so people wonder why I'm having some health problems. Those were strenuous years, but beautiful years. We finally had a great big old house named Palm Haven. We filled it full of children. This in Dwardy, where we live, 5 bedrooms, 3 baths. And it was a tremendous, it is a tremendous experience.
Okay.
We legally adopted 2, Leanne and Mark, the first ones. We helped bring 60. And last Thanksgiving, 49 of them all came from the north and all around to be with us, to celebrate. And Mark and Leanne, Mark is a businessman, went on and got his master's. This is all these details are important, and he has his own business today called Mieir Business Farms. He married a beautiful full Korean girl and gave us 2 beautiful grandchildren. Leanne went on to become a registered nurse, and she works full-time in the babies unit, new babies unit, married a Caucasian, and have 2 beautiful children. Altogether, we have 8 grandchildren. All of these kids are serving God. And when the kids all came together on last Thanksgiving, I heard those angels singing again. So during these days, what I call the autumn days, we are still supporting 30 missionaries as the money comes into us. We send it right on, orphanages and schools. And we still, from the telephone, we pray, and I put out my little paper. I am not doing too many speaking engagements because I'm having throat problems.
Well, thank goodness you're doing this little speaking engagement for me. I appreciate it.
Because we have to even leave here pretty
This
shortly.
is going to bring me many pleasant
I hope so.
moments
I think it's
of
great.
reiteration.
It's wonderful that you could have come down for this. And we're all part of this family. So as the Dix family leave, they leave you, not only you, but Charles and I, and many others that love them. But we are family. And that little video over there is a wonderful thing. I wish we had had it for our kids all these years, to record it all these first. Our little 4-year-old Luke, who says, "Oh, I believe in God."